here's the scene. The bell is just rung. Students are starting to come into the classroom to begin the next class. One student walks in visibly upset and starts to unleash this rant about how they feel about the education system. I've asked another student, Charles Hsu, to come and perform a monologue of the words that that student shared that day in that classroom. Charles?
The school system is just like so rigged. Like all it does for me is make me so stressed because it's like we get hours and hours of homework every single night, and so we have to stay up so late. Then the next day at school we fail all the tests and we can't do the work because we're so tired, and then your grades drop, so then the next night you have to stay up even later to do more work and more studying. And that just creates so many issues, like sleep issues, health issues, mental health issues, friend issues. And when you really think about it, high school is just like one big checkbox. It's not about what you're interested in or what matters to you, it's just checking off a list. And all these tests like ACT, SAT, it's about speed and prep, it's not about what's actually like meaningful to you. When you really think about it, the only thing that the school system has done to me is make me tired.
Thanks, Charles. Now, I wish this was an isolated incident, but it's not. Students tend to share similar stories with me almost on a daily basis. And my greatest fear is the day that my own children come home and share the same disillusionment and stress and anxiety with the education system. And I know far too many parents who have. The students tend to open up in creative and comfortable expressive spaces. Among other things, the creative process utilizes curiosity to make us open to the world, to build meaning through connections with ourselves and others and our multiple intelligences. It uses imagination as a way to expand our comprehension and empathy. A great deal of evidence, as well as my own experiences, suggest that creativity is how humans learn and grow, and it will save education as we know it. Unfortunately, schools are trying to kill creativity. And we know this thanks to Sir Ken Robinson's most watched TED Talk of all time, Do Schools Kill Creativity? Which is something he confirmed 13 years ago, and by many measures we're in a worse situation today than we were then. This is when creativity is widely considered to be the #1 skill needed for the world and for future success. Something that was confirmed in a survey of over 1,500 CEOs. I also know that creativity is rarely, if ever, taught in our classrooms, definitely not specifically or comprehensively enough. My own deep dive into the creative process started about 9 years ago when a student raised his hand in a class after I had assigned a project and said, "Mr. Sykora, I can't do this project. I'm not creative." I said, "Okay, well, what is creativity?" His answer, "Imagination." Okay, what's imagination? He said, "Creativity." Then he got frustrated and said, "I don't know, it's that light bulb that pops up over people's heads. That doesn't happen for me." Now, imagination is really important to the creative process, but this magical view of light bulbs popping up over people's heads is how a lot of others view creativity. And it was this moment when I realized that I wasn't teaching creativity specifically and purposefully enough, and that I needed to do something about it. And there are two major things that I'm concerned about. People struggle to connect to themselves, to others, and the information and media in their lives. And they also struggle to think creatively, to adapt and embrace change, even when they say they want change. And these two things are linked, and they're part of the checkbox culture that currently drives education decision-making, one in which all the students try to check off the exact same boxes to get into the colleges they think that they want to go to, regardless of their own interests, intelligences, skills, or aspirations. It's also part of, and I think many would agree, why we haven't done more to meet the climate crisis, which is as much a failure of imagination and empathy for others. It's why we make students carry around 50-pound backpacks full of books and photocopied paper, even though we live in the digital revolution and all of the information in the world is in their back pockets. But this talk isn't about problems. It's supposed to be about solutions. We have enough that prove these issues. In fact, another famous TED Talk by Duncan Wardle on a similar topic asked of his audience at the end, what is the opposite of bravery? Well, it's not cowardice. The opposite of bravery is the status quo. Conforming is easy. It takes courage to break outdated patterns. So let's be brave, and let's start by talking about some neuroscience. A great place to begin are the inputs and outputs in the brain. For example, the inputs and output receptors in a mouse's brain are really close together, which doesn't leave a lot of room for variation. So if a mouse encounters a stick, it only really has one option: go over the stick. The human brain, on the other hand, has evolved over time to expand the distance between input and output. So if a human encounters a stick, it might pick it up, tap it on a tree to make a sound, draw with it in the sand, pretend it's a sword, or in early hominid experiences, use it to pull insects out of a tree to eat. This space allows for variation, failures, mistakes, unintended consequences, which are responsible for some of the greatest developments in the human history. This space allows for an infinite amount of connections, neural connections, and the more we connect, the better. The more we connect to ourselves, our own lives, and the lives of others, the better. And the more that we connect to seemingly different content areas, the more interesting our outputs become. It's not just the arts. All subjects matter in the creative process. Now, scientists have also found that artists' brains have more gray matter in them. So, which is responsible for things like the senses and memory, decision-making. So the arts are important as well. And another gap that's important to bring up is that between emotional and our logical centers. Simply put, we are emotional beings because those are the parts of our brain that develop first. And a great deal of evidence is showing how important emotional intelligence is on human development, hence the recent and super important focus on socio-emotional learning in our schools. Ignoring emotional intelligence for the sake of academic achievement is pretty wasteful. It's kind of like asking kids to jump before we teach them to walk. We feel before we think. Creativity directly engages all of this, and curiosity is an important part of nurturing that engagement. In fact, curiosity is the soil for learning. I can't express enough how important it is and how much it came up when I was reading about development and learning, how it came up as a source of mindfulness, which is important to the creative process, the source of creativity and innovation. At its core, curiosity is about approaching the world with an open eagerness to learn. It's inquiry, like having a conversation with a caring friend whose only interest is to see you grow through thoughtful dialogue. It's the source of excitement, much like a child anticipating a wrapped present in the mystery of what's inside. The sense of awe as we stare into the universe of the unknown and want more. And that's because it's associated with affection. And we all know how important affection is, thanks to Swiss child psychologist Piaget, who went so far as to say that if you're not particularly interested or like what you're learning about, it's pointless because you're not going to learn anything. Everybody knows that Einstein failed at school, but few know why. It's because he couldn't handle the military-style approach to learning. He eventually switched to a Swiss progressive school at the age of 15 that he said nurtured his curiosity, and he succeeded and flourished. And he's famous for saying, "I have no special talents, I'm only passionately curious." If curiosity is the soil for learning, then imagination is the light, an important fuel source for extending our comprehension, our connections, and our empathy. If I say or you read the word skyscraper, your visual cortex goes to work forming an image of a tall building that you can make associations with, that you can connect to. Imagination is the ability to perceive things without any sensory information in front of us. Neuroscientist Samir Zeki went so far as to say, and I'll paraphrase, that creativity is an extension of the function of the brain. The ability to form meaning from sensory information or to imagine in the absence of sensory information. It has been described as the ability to think of things as possible, the source of flexibility and originality in the human brain. They say that empathy only extends as far as our sight, and imagination has the ability to extend our perceptions indefinitely, which is important because an extensive survey of college students over the past 40 years has shown a great decline in their abilities to imagine and empathize with the situations of others. So what is creativity? Well, at the root, it's to create. Many would say that it's the ability to create things of inherent value, but it really goes much further than this. Creativity is the big human intelligence, that which connects all other forms of intelligence with the goal of actualizing our learning, of manifesting our thoughts into something that we can see and use. At its core, it's about copying, transforming, and combining. All life on the earth was created when cells started to copy, then transform, mutate over time, and then combine with other cells to make all of the complex life forms you see on the earth today. You should check out Kirby Ferguson's TED Talk, Everything is a Remix, for more on those fundamentals. Now, this process is not linear. It ebbs and flows, circling back and forth until our thoughts become creation, until we manifest our learning. And the shame is, a lot of the words that are a part of this process are missing from our educational experiences. Things like relevance, relationships, risk, play, failure, embracing mistakes, critique, and agency. For more clarity, here are 3 phases and 6 steps in the creative process that can be used in an educational curriculum. The first phase is curiosity, and the first step is influence, inspiration. Sir Isaac Newton once said that creation requires influence. This is collecting ideas, learning through emulation. Anybody who has learned to play a musical instrument has learned by playing other people's music, by copying. And then we can start to connect the ideas that we've collected. In the case of a musician, it could be combining 2 different sources of music to make a new source of music, to filter that and make it a different thing, to combine ideas. Then we get to the innovation stage where we really start to use our imaginations to filter these connections through our own lives, ourselves, and our experiences. This is when we start to build on the things that have been created before, to transform. All we're really doing when we make something is innovating something that exists. And then we get to the creation phase, immersive experiences, taking our emotional thoughts, our logical thoughts, and putting that into the physical so we can see it and hold it. And we start with the prototype, which is testing our assumptions, be it through sketching, drafts, modeling. We start to connect the head, the heart, and the hand, putting this into the world so that other people can see it. And this is a great time to get feedback of our creations and our ideas, because other people can see it, before we move to the work step, which is the hard part, the 10,000 hours of practice needed to master something. This is meaningful rigor because we are connected to it, not busy work. This is where we create an inner dialogue with the process where we make something, reflect on that, respond, and make something else. Then leading to the critique step, this critique phase. And it's the last phase, but it really shouldn't wait till the end and should happen throughout, and it often sends us back to the beginning. This is reflection, qualitative assessment, thinking about our learning, metacognition. And it's inherently collaborative because we need other people's points of views to see our creations more objectively, to challenge our biases and work against our egos with the name of progression for the greater good. So here's my call to action. Let's take steps. 13 years since the most watched TED Talk without much change. I think we can do better than that. And I think the first step is to start cultivating a culture of curiosity. And we should begin with teachers. Let's get teachers collaborating. I cannot preface enough how powerful it is to work with another content area specialist who sees learning differently than I do, working on a daily basis to build new forms of learning together. Let's have professional development that teaches teachers how to bring creativity into their classroom. We need visionary leadership that prizes this, be it through coaching, mentorship, or workshops. This will begin to work against the checkbox culture that currently pervades the status quo of education. And then let's take a step of building classes that are creative. If creativity is considered the #1 skill needed in the world, maybe we should have a class that just teaches creativity. Having all this technology, spending all this money on this technology that we have in schools is kind of wasteful if we're not giving students the ability to use it creatively. It's like we're all GPS units running around without any sense of direction. Let's create interdisciplinary, co-taught classes that break the current silos that we've created on learning. Connections are the telltale sign of learning, and fragmentation and isolation are its opposites. And the next step, and this is a really big one, student autonomy. Students need choice and control over their learning. I'm not saying that they need 100% freedom, because they don't, but they need to be able to form the connections that build the relevance that they need to really learn and actualize that experience. And as such, our assessment should be more focused on the process rather than the result. Tests should not be dictating what students learn, and we really shouldn't want everybody learning the exact same thing anyway. Everybody having the exact same ideas about the world is a terrible idea for the creative process. One of my favorite parts about creativity is that it's inherently differentiated. Any parent of 2 or more children knows that every child is different, with a unique intelligence, with unique needs and aspirations and ways of actualizing their learning. Let's start to build an education system that recognizes that. And then we can get to the big change. I'm talking structural change, the big step. Things like graduation requirements, the schedule, time, and space. Graduation requirements should probably, in the least, be cut in half. Students need that space to be able to take the classes that they want to take that are important for their futures. Not what somebody decided 10 years ago or 100 years ago is important for them. Student schedules are so packed and they're full of things that displace other experiences that we know enhance human development. Things like reading for pleasure, having dinner with their families, or just exploring the world with their friends. We all know that students are not meant to wake up and be at school by 8 a.m. in the morning, then work through a military-style schedule of 50 minutes in math, now stop. 50 minutes in English, now stop. When do they have time to process the information, let alone make the connections in their busy day? These steps will start to work against the disillusionment, the fear, the anxiety, the negative stress that pervades what students feel on a daily basis. We have to be willing to fail and then try again. Learn from our failures and then do something new. Remaining stagnant is negligent at best, expecting different results. The creative process engages these things. It asks us to make changes. The world has been changing around us, and we have not kept up. Thought must produce action. We can take some steps. Thank you.